Good afternoon and welcome to BroadCAST, the webinar interview series from the UNL Center for Academic Success and Transition. I'm your host, Dan Hutt, and we are delighted to have with us today Nebraska Performing Arts Hall of Fame inductee and Iowa Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductee, musician, author, and educator, Dr. Dan Bird. Dan, it's a real honor to have you with us here today.
Hey, Dan. Well, thanks for having me. And, it's always a pleasure to talk to you and run into you over all the years. So thanks for asking me to be on. I appreciate it.
The pleasure's all ours. Now, we'll start off in your youth, Dan. I know that you were born in Alabama. How old were you when you moved to Falls City, Nebraska? And what was it like growing up there?
That's a good question. My dad actually was in the Air Force, and he's from the Malvern, Iowa area, which is just like 30 miles from Omaha. And he was down there in Alabama in the Air Force at the time. So I happened to be born there. My three siblings were all born in Omaha, well, actually Bellevue now at the Offutt Air Force Base. So I was only down there for a short time. And though I was born in Alabama and I do now play a banjo, I did not come home with a banjo on my knee, which would have been a nice regret for my poor wife. But we ended up moving back up here afterwards. We moved to Malvern and lived over there until the beginning of fourth grade for me. And then my mom's hometown was Falls City, Nebraska, and the family moved there then. And that's where I was raised until college and then till now.
Growing up in Falls City must have been a lot like growing up in Tecumseh for me. Was that a delightful childhood for you?
Oh, wonderful. Yeah. In those days, of course, I grew up in the 50s and 60s. And, in a small town, you can get on your bike and go anywhere. You can walk anywhere. There's just a different kind of atmosphere than you find, like, say, in the middle of Omaha or Lincoln or somewhere. It's just a little different.
Right.
And as you grew up in Tecumseh, just up the road from us, and I played high school football against Tecumseh many times, including against the great Tony Davis in my day. So that was kind of fun.
Yes.
Yes. But growing up in a small town gives you a lot of opportunities. You get to try everything in a small school, as you know. You can try everything from the sports teams to choir, band, speech, acting, all kinds of cool things. But yeah, the small town was a great atmosphere for myself and my siblings to grow up in.
I recognize exactly what you're talking about. And I find it remarkable, Dan, that when you were in school in Falls City, you were one of the finest athletes in Southeast Nebraska, but you were also in a rock band. You had your first gig at the Elks Club in Falls City. Now, in my experience in high school, the jocks don't always hang out with the rock and roll people, but you were the exception to that rule. Who did you hang out with?
I was smart. My class, Falls City Sacred Heart, had 21 students. There were only 5 guys and all girls. The rest were girls. So there wasn't a lot of cliques in that small group. And I was real good friends with some kids a year above me in that class. And they're the guys, a couple of us in my class and a couple of them formed the rock band. So I had the unique experience of going out and playing in Jug Brown Stadium and playing against Tecumseh, trying to tackle Tony Davis and other things. And then going in at the end of the game and suiting or changing up, shower, put on the other clothes and go up on the stage in our gymnasium and play for dances. So that was kind of unique. I might be banged up and sore a little, but when it came to playing that guitar, I didn't care. It was a unique, fun thing to do.
Yeah. What were your plans right out of high school, Dan? How did college fit into that picture? Did you always know you were going to college?
Well, I was the first one in my family to go to college.
Okay, you're first gen.
Yeah. And I was good enough in football to be offered a scholarship at Northwest Missouri State over in Maryville, Missouri. And my best friend at the time a year older than I had gone there. So I didn't even think about any place else. I said, I'm going to go where Tom is at. And so I went there to play football. I really didn't like football that much. I'm really a calm, quiet, simple fella, and I didn't like running into people and all of that stuff so much. It wasn't in my blood, but I went anyway because it was an opportunity. And played for a full year, busted up my foot pretty good, went back out the next year and said, this too much injuries to me, and I'm going to hurt my hands and not play guitar someday. And all I really wanted to do was play music at the time. So actually I stayed there, and in my junior year left college, and I'd been studying sociology mostly and psychology, trying to find what niche would work for me. Because, at age 18, 19, 20, you usually don't know. Some people do, and they're the lucky ones. But those of us who didn't know what we wanted to do, I just took some different classes, took all the standard things you had to do, and then tried a lot of psychology classes, trying to find where I should go. But in my heart, I just wanted to play music. So I did. In my junior year, I did leave, moved back to Falls City. A couple of my best friends who were a year older had graduated from college by then, and they were back there. So we started up, we continued our high school band. Basically, we put some different guys together. And so I went from being a college junior to a rock and roll guy, just as we could in Falls City. But after a little while, you realize it's really hard to do a lot in a small town. There's only so many places to play. And we realized if we wanted to do anything, we'd probably better go to at least to Omaha or Lincoln or St. Joe or Kansas City. And we chose, two of us chose to come up here to Omaha and do an acoustic duo thing. And we did that for a while. That's how I got out of Falls City.
Very good. I'm reminded several years ago in one of my seminar classes here at UNL, there was I was talking, we do a lot of music and arts related activities in class. And I was talking about the great Dan Bird from the Jacks, and a student in there from Falls City, a football player, actually said, Dan Bird, I know him. And I said, how do you know Dan? And he said, well, his name's up on the board in the gymnasium for the 100-yard dash record. Now that's pretty remarkable, all these years to still be up there, right? Because Falls City Sacred Heart's a terrific sports school, so that's quite an honor.
Yeah, it's amazing that that record has stayed up there for, I hate to say it, but 50 years. It was in 71, so 52 years. I don't know. I was just lucky I could always run real fast. I think I was scared of everything, so I ran fast. But that was kind of unusual that had happened. And it is still up there, so my name is known.
That's wonderful. That's remarkable. You said that you studied psychology and sociology when you were in school initially, and we talk about in our classes here how students know going into the program that they'll be asked to take courses in a wide range of disciplines outside their majors, and we talk about how that contributes to making one a more well-rounded person. Do you happen to recall any courses that you took outside of your major that were particularly impactful at the time?
Well, at Maryville, my best friend who had gone there ahead of me the year before had told me about actually a poetry class with a professor there that he was very moved by. And so I signed up for that one. And that one was very interesting. It kind of opened the mind up to things don't always mean exactly what you think they are, especially with old classic poetry where there's all kinds of possibilities. So that was really good. Another class I took was in the psychology. There was something about we got together for meetings where you just shared. I'd never had anything like that. A group of people It was volunteer, and it's outside the actual class, but they got together to have I want to say not an encounter exactly, but a chance to talk to each other. And I remember walking out of that meeting the first time because I was just a lost soul over there. It was really hard for me to adjust from the small town to college in a way. Mm-hmm. In the personal interaction with people way, that was tricky. And I remember going to that, and people just kind of talked about what's going through their minds as freshmen in a college or sophomores or whatever they were. I think they were kind of mixed. And I remember walking out of that place, walking on air. I just felt like I can talk to people. They're having the same experiences and all of that I'm having. And that was a wonderful feeling to get a chance to just kind of talk and tell, well, I'm really not sure, blah, 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 whatever you had to say. And they would kind of help you just by feedback. Anytime students who are not quite sure what they want to do can get together and talk to other students with or without a teacher there, that can do wonders. And I remember that was good for all of us that were there. And I felt really good after that.
That sounds terrific. Lori's thinking right now, and I would concur. It sounds like that experience is really similar to what we reach for here in the CAST office. We work not exclusively with, but with a whole lot of first generation college students. And there's more of a support mechanism in place now than there ever has been. So, Dan, when was the first time in your life that you ever considered music to be a viable full-time career?
When I was 11, I knew that music would run through my whole life somehow. And that really was the old cliche of seeing the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, you know. Yeah. I was 11 years old, I think. And it was just, the world at that time was, you know, post World War II. And it was just kind of gray everywhere. Just things weren't alive, so to speak. And the Beatles came out, and many of us just go, oh, all of a sudden we had something to really focus on and to feel good about. And from then on, I thought I just wanted a guitar so bad. And of course, my mom got me a ukulele, which I tried to play. I could play Row Your Boat and some of those, and eventually got a guitar and continued to get better ones as the time went by. But as far as making a decision to become a professional, that happened after I met my wife. We got married here. I actually met her when I was playing in the duo doing acoustic things, and ended up living in Omaha. And we were going to move to Colorado. We decided we needed to go somewhere exciting. And whatever reason, something happened. We realized we'd be far away from her family and mine. And at the last minute, we sort of changed our mind, said, let's figure it out. And at that very time, a friend of mine who had another band, they lost their guitar player. And he came to me and said, would you consider coming in and joining our band? We lost our guitar player. And I thought, well, since I'm staying here, I don't want to go back to the job I had at the time. For 2 years when we first got married, I was an animal caretaker, and I didn't want to do that anymore. I wanted to do something different. And we found a house outside in the country by Bennington and rented that place, and that was perfect. And I said, let's do it. So at that time, I became a full-time musician and did that for a year or two, and then decided I wanted to move on and do my own band. And went back to working a couple of jobs for a year each as the other band formed and got going. At that point, I was still working, and we were going out and doing gigs and on the weekends. And a booking agency, a manager from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, came to see us.
Full Tilt Management.
Yes, we were in. Over in Denison, Iowa. The guy that ran it and owned it came and saw us and offered us a contract. He would manage us and book us for, a certain percentage. And we decided, we would do that. So we worked with him for a few years, and he put us out on the road 3 weeks at a time, get home for a couple of days, 3 weeks at a time. That went on for several years. But
I
that is
remember these things, Dan. I remember. I look at the Jacks poster every single day of the world, so I know about Full Tilt in that capacity. What did your friends and family have to say about your new burgeoning career in music?
Well, my wife was really the only one up here that we knew other than band members, because we were fresh to Omaha, and she completely encouraged me to do it, or at least did not do anything to hinder it. And it's amazing to me when I look back at it. I was gone all the time, and she was out on a farm by herself. And now that I look at it, I thought, well, but I had to go do it, and she knew it. And the band took full time, but it paid us well enough that we could do it full time. But my other friends, they knew that I would be doing that because of even back in Falls City before I moved out, the duo had played and the bands had played around. So I don't think anybody was surprised. As far as support from family, I think my family has always been the kind of hands off. You do what you want to do, what you can do, and we'll support you as long as you really mean
wonderful.
That my mom was always that
wonderful.
Way. Yeah. So we went full time then.
Do you speak to that issue in your song "Take Me Back to the Island"? You talk about your mother and her reservations. Am I reading into things?
Yeah. I use that as kind of a metaphor, actually. The most of the song is about, I love to be in the islands. I miss it. I want to go back and all that stuff. And that's probably the most requested original song that we did in the Jacks. We would get asked for that song a lot. But the part on that refrain where it said, my mom said, you've got to stop this dreaming, because everybody thinks you crazy. I said, yeah, Mom, you're right. I've got to stop this dreaming because everybody thinks I'm crazy. And that was about hearing these songs in my head, because I was writing a lot of songs. My mom never really said that. I did that to illustrate because the part at the end where it goes, but when I go upstairs, I hear it in my head, the song comes quietly in my head. Take me back. I want to go to the island. So my mom never discouraged that at all. That was kind of unfair to put her in that, but I don't think
they're great lyrics. I love that song.
Thank you.
Now, Dan, the artist's pathway is a financially precarious one, generally. No work provided health insurance, so on and so forth. Did that ever scare you at any point? You've indicated, however, that the Jacks made good money, and you employed 3 other people in the sound and lights and production side of things. But did it ever lead to any sleepless nights of like, how am I going to make ends meet this way?
No,
not at all. Okay.
I believed in the music part of it so much. And like I said, we made pretty good money. We had a management company and doing booking and all that stuff. So we were solid that way. Didn't have to worry about that until, a few years into it, we did split off because we didn't feel we were getting management from Full Tilt. We were just getting bookings. We decided we could save a lot of money and do our own. And we started our own company, which was Quest
Productions.
Yeah. And we hired people to do our booking. And so we did all of it that way. But the finances never became a real problem for many, many years. We were fine. And my wife was a registered nurse. So we had insurance, health insurance for me through her, which made it pretty safe for me to go out and be a rock and roll fool. But,
In your opinion, would it be easier or harder for a band today to achieve the sort of success that the Jacks enjoyed? Jacks bassist Stan Polinsky indicated in the Nebraska Performing Arts Hall of Fame induction video that the Jacks played at a time when it was an era that was great for live music, and all of the small town ballrooms like the Elms Ballroom in Syracuse, where I discovered you guys. Do you think it would be easier or harder for a band today to reach that level of success?
Well, because I haven't been out there like touring like we did for 30 years now or whatever it is. I couldn't say. I do know I kind of keep an eye on what's going on around here, and things have really changed. We used to make a lot of money playing colleges. I know, and a lot of one-nighters. That was what we generally did. Though at a time, there was a time when we would play clubs where you would play 5 nights. That was pretty common then too. We would play up in North Dakota or Wyoming or somewhere, and it would be, 5 nights. And that's where good money came. But then we found there was better money if they sent us colleges and everything. And we did one-nighters in a lot of colleges. At one time, I swear that we did 21 one-nighters in 21 days in a row.
Oh,
but when I
wow.
think back at it, I wonder if my memory's right. Maybe it was like 10 and a day off, and I don't know. But we did a lot of those, and we would just come in, and we had such a great road crew. They had everything set up. Yeah. Especially, I understand that you came down to Syracuse when we played the ballroom and helped the road crew a bit. I didn't know that till you told me that recently.
Oh, I would get there at about 2:00 in the afternoon and do whatever those guys told me to do. Dan picked and the rest, and I would mule in the gear. Sometimes they would let me run the spotlight at shows. What do you remember about the Elms in Syracuse?
I remember it really well. I remember a couple of things about it. One thing, we played a New Year's Eve once there. I remember that because I remember we were on short break right around the midnight hour, and I went out into the hallway and called my wife. I remember that part. I remember playing some cuts from the album before it was released. Another time we played there through the PA just to see what it sounded like. That was really cool. And I remember the building and what it looked like, but I don't have any specific recalls of things that actually happened, except I really liked playing there.
Yeah. Oh, it was remarkable for me. That was the first time that I ever seen professional rock and rollers up close. That changed everything for me after that. So I'm very, very grateful to you in that capacity. Now, you mentioned the Beatles being such a big influence, and I know today you're a big Tom Petty fan. Who were some other influences that you would name as being really formative?
Oh, I loved Dan Fogelberg, the acoustic things that were going on at the time. Well, you mentioned Tom Petty. He came along a little later. When I first heard him, I was just amazed. I thought, here's a guy who writes music and plays music that I understand, that I feel like I have a good feeling for. But amazingly enough, I love the band Kansas. Were just huge in my mind back in those days, probably because they came from so close. They were actually originally from the Topeka area. Then they moved to Atlanta, but they, one version of them called White Clover had played in Fall City. So I'm kind of familiar with that. And then when I bought my very first guitar, good electric guitar, it was a red Les Paul, which is hanging on the wall right there.
Oh, beautiful guitar.
73 or so. I bought that in Topeka from Steam Music, and it was used, but it only hadn't been used very much. It looked brand new. And the rumor was it may have been originally owned by the guys in Kansas, but I don't believe that for a second. But those guys had a huge impact. And I wrote songs that kind of followed along what they were doing, very time changes and all this stuff in one of the original bands I was in earlier. But then I kind of moved away from the difficult stuff for bands to play, just because I had a hard time teaching some guys what to do. And I was hearing all this stuff. It's tricky.
I remember that guitar. That guitar just epitomized rock and roll for me. You have it right there?
Oh, heck yeah.
Oh my gosh. That's rock and roll right there. It's a
right here. My arm wore that part in the back. It's pretty beat up. I don't know. We don't have
that is something else.
Yeah, this is Lester. Lester's one of the easiest guitars I've ever had. It's so easy to play. The strings,
Yeah.
But he hangs.
You've made some great music.
Yep.
My
and I switched
goodness.
to some Fenders the last few years and just use whatever I need.
How much did you have to practice growing up, Dan, to become as brilliant as you are on guitar?
Brilliant is a very strong word. I'd say merely adequate, but how much practice? You know, when you love something, seriously, when you love doing something, and it's kind of your key focus in life, you just play whenever you can. I still do that. I still come down here almost daily. I record a lot of stuff, and I learn songs for the duo that I have now. And
yes,
I work on those things, and
you're
I still
very
play.
Prolific.
I love to learn new songs. I just learned 3 songs for Brian and I to do that aren't ours. We do some original stuff too, but these songs they're just fun to learn new stuff because it's a challenge. And so yeah, I play every day pretty much. And of course I keep expanding it. I've got a banjo a few years ago to add to it, and then I've got a lap steel I just got recently, and then another guitar and a 12-string electric, 12-string acoustic, just because I like different sounds. You know, it never
Absolutely.
gets. And keyboards, I can play a million sounds on the keyboards these days. You can get a realistic sounding almost anything with the keyboard.
Yes. Yeah, you were referring to your duo, that being, of course, the Bird-Mann Project, who we can still go today and see in action in Omaha. So, very good. Now, Dan, you've mentioned before that the greatest musicians that you've ever heard were the Nashville artists in Porter Wagner's band that you guys opened up for once in Des Moines. And I'm curious, when you hear musicians of that caliber, that good, what's the feeling for you? Is it a defeating feeling? I'll never be that good, or does it really motivate you? How did you respond?
That's an interesting question. Those guys were really good. I mean, I was shocked, and we didn't actually open up for them. We would have been the wrong band. What they did is they just used our PA, and we got the night off. Yeah, we played there for 4 or 5 nights, and one of the middle nights they were there. But we got to attend and watch and enjoy it. And the musicians are really, really good. And when you hear musicians like that, to me, it makes me want to keep improving. I hear there's so many good musicians in every area. I just want to keep improving and try to get a little closer every day that I can. But then again, I also think you just have to be what you are. You have to. I don't have the dexterity to do Tommy Emmanuel guitar stuff. You know, I can do it with my mouth. But that doesn't fool many people, you know. So you just keep practicing. And yeah, I get inspired if I hear somebody good. If they're doing
such
music,
a healthy way to look at it. I wish I was that way. When I hear someone that good, it almost always makes me want to quit. I'll never get, up to that level, but that's a great way to look at it.
Dan, I've heard some of your recordings, and the vocal things that you hear and come up with just blow me away. They're far beyond anything I could do or hear or even approach. Oh, yeah.
I don't believe you for a second, but you're very kind.
You haven't listened to your work lately then, because those vocal things are incredible.
Now, Dan, you penned 6 of the 8 songs on the Jack's wonderful record, In Danger. How do you feel that your songwriting today has changed since the Jack's days?
That's a great question. It's funny, those songs back then, usually I would take the idea to the band or something, and they would be very helpful. Those guys are 4 of my closest friends and will be, as long as we're around. We've lost one of them.
The late dear Tom Kenny. Sure.
Died a couple of years ago. And he was the heart and soul of the band, just the person that he was. But those guys were always open-minded. And that's why I left the band I was in before, because they played original music. They would play some, but they weren't that interested in it. And these guys had more interest. And plus, Bob Figueroa, the other guitar player, was also a writer. So we did some of his songs and all that. And but now I write by having a studio in my house. It's incredible what you can do. It used to be $100,000 to have a studio of value that would work and sound good. Now, for a computer, a laptop or whatever, and some software like Logic or whatever, you can have that $100,000 studio right in your house. And with that, and with the fact that you can use all of the keyboards to do any instrument you can think of, you can build up incredible things without the old way. So in that way, the songs I write are no longer me and an acoustic guitar. They're me and a guitar, and then often I'll use a cello. Always I do the bass and the drums. You can do everything. And so I just play along with things until I feel that's it. That's what I want. And I'll try this and I don't like it because I'm not a natural keyboard player, but I can push buttons and find them. So if anyone's interested in music, I would say the world is wide open for you.
Yeah, home recording is really revolutionized over the last 10 years. Yeah, it's something else. Now, one of the things that I always loved, maybe the main thing that I used to love about the Jacks, is that everyone in the band sang. Just beautiful vocal harmonies all the time. I'm curious how it was decided in the group who sang which parts on the songs.
That's a great question, too. Generally, the person who brought the song in or wrote it would be the lead singer. After that, usually if Bob brought in or he was going to sing a song, usually I was the first one that would step in and find a harmony, usually right above or whatever would fit. Dan Plinsky, the bass player, would almost always do the higher parts. He just had a voice that would handle that. So Bob and I could switch, which one was at the bottom or middle, and Dan would be up here. And then Tom Kenny didn't sing all that often, but when he did, he often would do a real high part. Or in some cases, he would do, we would insist that he sing a couple of tunes. He wasn't kind of a natural singer. He would just kind of do it, and it was a little different, and it was great to hear him. And we'd add harmonies. I don't know. We never really discussed it. We just kind of just did it.
Okay. It fell together naturally, it sounds like. Yeah. Now, as an entertainer back in the day, playing 150, 200 shows a year, was it sometimes a struggle to put on an enthusiastic face on nights when you just didn't feel like it?
I was thinking about that, and almost every show was such fun for us that we didn't feel that way very often. I don't remember ever going on stage angry at any of the other guys. I don't remember ever doing that. And of course, we had such a great road crew. They made life easy for us. So we would come in the afternoon, do a sound check, and go out, get something to eat, come back. And it was easy. We got to play around a lot, more than anything. They were so good. But there were a few toward the end of the band when we were kind of doing it just for the money. We were kind of burnt out after 12 years on the road, and we were just doing it for the money, sort of. If you played a place and there was just nobody there, it could become a real drag on your energy and your desire. You just didn't want to be there. Some of those happened toward the end, and then other ones were just as good as ever. Kind of depended on the audience and the locale.
Yeah, that must have been difficult to sort of conjure that enthusiasm on some of those nights if it wasn't going great or whatever, for whatever reason. And I always say it's one of my personal defects. If something isn't going good, even apart from the music or whatnot, I still dwell on that, and I don't have an operative back burner, so to speak. But Bob Figueroa, Jack's co-founder and guitarist, vocalist, had a great quote in your induction ceremony for the Nebraska Performing Arts Hall of Fame. He said, "We were a family and we fought and had tense moments, but we shared this one thing and kept going and really went far." And I think that's a pretty apt summation. Would you say so?
I would agree. When we first got booked and were sent out on the road, when you're playing that much, you start getting really tight. And, you know, you can anticipate everything anyone's going to do. You know where you're going. You can change your solos each night, but you get this. And I always insisted on set lists so that we would not be talking between songs about, well, what are we going to do? I don't want to do that. I'd always insist on it be really tight and switch around who's singing, you know, just so it would try to flow.
Right.
And I forgot what your original question was.
Just being able to conjure that enthusiasm maybe on nights when it wasn't there organically.
Usually we had crowds and it was easy. I mean, it's so true that the crowd gives you the energy and then it becomes effortless if you've got a good response from the crowd. When that wasn't there, you just kind of trudge through it, and it's you fake it, I guess. But it's always fun to play, but you can't burn out on it.
Right. It seems pivotal too that component of trust in your bandmates must be a supreme component that way. And if I may, I'd like to read a quote from Dan Polinsky that really struck me. He mentioned that he learned this from his dad and from the Jacks as well. Dan says, "The thing a musician will tell you when they're really into music is it's not the egoism to be able to play in front of people. What it is, when the spirit of music is in you, you can't fail. It's natural, you're connected, and it's the most beautiful thing you can imagine." What do you think about that? And have you ever been in a band situation where that wasn't the case and there wasn't that explicit trust between the members?
Oh, sure. I've played in some bands with some other people where something just didn't quite work right. That doesn't happen that much because if I'm working with somebody and I feel like it's that way, I will get out. So the things I'm doing, like with Brian and other bands I've been in with some guys in Iowa and stuff, they felt right, or I wouldn't stay there. That's for sure. But what Dan Polinsky said is absolutely on the money, because a good example of that is sometimes the Jacks, after many years of being apart, we'd get back together occasionally to do a show, or some reason somebody would really ask us to for something special. Sometimes we would go rehearse, and we rehearse at Tom Kinney's house over in Iowa or somewhere. Sometimes those rehearsals is where that magic came together. No audience, the four guys playing, and it's just, I mean, you're just laughing, you know, in the middle or the end of songs, because it was so effortless, because the connection is still there after years. So that
magic was really just fun. Latent the whole time. Yeah. And that leads into my next question. It's just remarkable that the Jacks were together for a dozen years. And describe the importance of humor in the Jacks. And I think about songs like Tommy is a Romeo, and all of the inside jokes in the band. Was that a factor that really contributed to your longevity, would you say? You guys love to laugh.
Oh, the road trips in the van, you know, the road trips, it just kept us going. And Tom Kinney, the drummer who's passed, one of the funniest people in the universe, and everybody who ever met him says that's the first thing they say. Tom was so funny, because he never thought about himself. He was just out there, so good. one of my, to this day, one of my closest friends, and I still miss him horribly. But some of the things we did, one time we had a Who medley where Bob Figueroa, the other guitar player, would go out and start off with a guitar and sing, you know, some Who are you, just some things, and then we would come in one at a time and add on. Well, one time we were playing somewhere on this big stage, I think it was in Des Moines, and Tom, who was the biggest jokester of all, he had this had a remote car that you could run, you know, about so big. So unbeknownst to Tom or Bob, who was being very serious with a spotlight on him and with the smoke machines and all of that, Tom comes up, puts this car where Bob doesn't see it, and then he steps back where he can't be seen, and he starts running that car. And
across the stage,
right across the stage in front of Bob, real slow, with a big sign on it that says something like "kick me" or something silly, something worse maybe. But it just went, and Bob's trying to be real serious, and Tom starts driving his car around. I mean, we're supposed to be a professional act. And another time, poor Bob got picked on again. We played somewhere that for some reason they had a screen that would come down. They used the place for movies at other time. And so Bob's up there doing his thing before we come on. And all of a sudden, while he's singing and playing, and then it goes back up, you know. Oh, that Tom, he was so evil. I think Bob usually flowed with it, but sometimes it was right on the edge, you know. So there was a lot of that hijinks.
You may not know this. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Tom Kenny knew every joke in the world, and every time you saw him, he'd have some new ones for you. And they were generally how he remembered him, and his delivery was so perfect that makes a big difference. The humor,
one of a kind. Mm-hmm. When I was a senior in high school at Tecumseh, and you guys had come down to play Tecumseh High School prom 2 years in a row, and at one point, Tom sent down a big old tube full of Jack's posters for me to distribute for a show at the Elms Ballroom coming up. And I drove all over Southeast Nebraska, putting those up, happily thinking I was part of the band in some way.
We still owe you for that too.
Well, after I graduated and spent my college savings to go to Finland to see my girlfriend at the time, Tom called back to our house in Tecumseh and spoke with my mother about the possibility of me coming to work in some capacity for you guys in a promotional sort of way. Mm-hmm. And when I found out about that after I got back, I was like, I would have stayed home from Europe had I known that. That could have sent my life on to a whole new trajectory that way.
Yeah, when we did Quest Incorporated, Quest Productions, Tom ran it. We actually replaced him as a drummer for a while, and he ran that and hired several people to do bookings and the promotional stuff and all of that. And I'm sure he thought of you. You would have been excellent at it. And then, but it wasn't a year or two later, we brought Tom back into the band. We just realized we weren't the same without him. I mean, the band was better than ever because we had a super drummer, but Tom was a really good drummer.
Ware.
Yeah, Tom Ware came in. And then John Martinez replaced him. Yeah. And then Tom Ware didn't want to be on the road all the time. He was a big producer, actually, and he actually produced in his own warehouse production studio, Lady Gaga, among others.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, some big stuff. So he wanted to do that more than be on the road, and we couldn't blame him. Still a good friend to this day.
Right. Dan, you've said in the Nebraska Hall of Fame interview, we pulled off a whole bunch of stuff that we had no right to do, like Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody, but we were so courageous or dumb that we did them anyway. It seems like you were really operating fearlessly at the time, just from the idea that anything was possible. Is that accurate?
Yeah, we did all kinds of different songs of our own and, famous songs and rock tunes, this and that. But we pulled off songs that you would never think a four-piece would do it. And I do. We did a Queen medley, including about 5 or 6 of their songs, including the Bohemian Rhapsody with 4 voices. That was
And
crazy. But I
Flash
have
Gordon
recordings
was
of
part
it,
that.
you know.
Yeah.
And we also did a Who medley. We did a big production Pink Floyd medley from the Wall.
Hmm.
That was a big one.
Hmm.
And we did a Beatles medley at one time, and several others I'm just forgetting right now. But yeah, we wanted to do something beyond just play song, 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 song. So we put those production
Hmm.
things together, and that
Right.
was a big boost for us. It was fun and tricky to do, but we had fun.
Hmm. Dan, I wish you would tell the story of the time that the Jacks went to Kansas City to meet with a production company that insisted that if the band wanted to really make its step forward, it would have to move to the East or West Coast to advance your career that way. And you guys weren't having any of it. What made you want to stay true to your Midwestern roots in that sense?
Yeah, you said it pretty much exactly as it was, Dan.
Hmm.
What happened is we had changed managers. This is before we started Quest Productions. And we were looking for a different manager. And we worked with one from Minneapolis for a short time. He came down and met with us, and we felt that wasn't going to work. And so we
Hmm.
went to Kansas City and met with, and I couldn't even tell you the name of the company now, but the biggest booking, whatever they are, down there at the time. And we went down there. We had our album so they could play it and hear it when we talked to them about managing us and so on. And they're the ones that they loved the album. They said, it sounded great and all that stuff. But they said, in order for you guys to do more right now, in those days, this is kind of the way it was. They said, you need to go to the East or the West Coast. And I don't know if that meant they would have signed us or anything, but I guess they just didn't feel the Midwest was a good place for what we were doing. But we said no. And the reason we did that is my wife and I had started to have kids, or were going to have kids soon, we decided. And I wasn't about to do that and move away. It just wasn't worth it to me. Even as important as music was, the family was more important at that time. So, and I think Bob was about ready to have kids then too. Well, not Bob, but his wife. That would have been really strange.
Hmm.
But anyway, we decided, no, we're not going anywhere. We either do it this way or not at all. So we just didn't do that.
Right. You've described the Jacks as being at the time the hardest working band around. Is that Midwestern work ethic in action?
I would think so. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I feel bad for the road crew, not for the band. Those poor guys, we would play a gig. They would tear down the gear, load them into the trucks, head on out. And, we'd be off at Country Kitchen having some biscuits and gravy before we went in for a full night's sleep at the hotel. And they'd be driving on
Yeah.
to the next gig and setting up and all of that. So yeah, we were a hardworking band as far as it went, night after night playing. If you're sick or you're whatever, you still went on, you did your show. Now, I do
Hmm.
want to mention, because I know we're going to run out of time before too long. I want to mention an aspect of what I did when I quit playing. I decided I would go back to college. This was 15 years after I left Northwest Missouri State.
Okay.
And I went back to college here in Omaha at University of Nebraska at Omaha, and didn't know what I wanted to do yet. So I took several classes, and this is for anyone out there who sees this who may be returning. I took several classes scattered all over. I can't remember, social work, theater, music. I took several different things, and I still didn't know what to do. And then finally, I just stumbled onto an education class. And for whatever reason, it was an elementary education class. So I took that just to see what would happen. And the people I met in that class completely turned me around. And I realized being a teacher at the elementary level was a special thing. And so I went ahead and majored in that, went on back, took all the classes and all that stuff, and became a 6th grade teacher. We had 2 children then, and I told my wife, I'm not going on the road anymore. We closed down the band so everybody could do other things. and I became a teacher for 7 years, a sixth grade teacher, and then went.
What was that like?
Well, none of them knew I'd ever, played in a band. I was just a guy. I was only 38 years old. So, and they thought I was younger than that. They just thought I was a new teacher. And, it was great. I mean, there's good and bad about being a teacher, that's for sure. And I had some great times. Yes. I had some challenging times, mostly with the parents, not with the kids. Parents would like to get at their kids sometimes. So that was tricky. But being a teacher was so special, and the people I met then. And then I went down and worked for 15 years in the headquarters of the Omaha Public Schools as a technology training supervisor. So I got to work with teachers then and students, but mostly teachers, on how to use modern technology in the classroom. So I got to do that with a team for 15 years and then retired as early as I could. And at that point, went back to playing music again, which I'm still doing.
Yeah. Right. When you went back to music, you said that you realized that it was indeed your true calling. What is it about music that makes it so powerful, both for the musicians and the listeners, to be able to do impossible things like make someone fall in love with you or stave off depression? What is it about music?
If you get down to the nitty gritty of it, it's hard to explain, but it's all vibration, of course. Musical tones and notes are vibrations, and in combination with things, they give you certain sounds. And why some affect some people one way and some affect other people another way. Like, I might have a song where I listen to it and I just go, oh, that is so amazing and cool, or sad or whatever. You might hear it and say, I don't really care for that song that much, because that happens all the time with me and my friends. I'll say, I don't really. But if I found that if I go back and listen to it several more times, what the magic of it will grow and I'll understand it. And that's like songs that we learn here. What is it about music that does that? I don't know.
It's an impossible question.
It is. I mean, it's just it's just a life affirming. I don't know how to explain it. It's just a life force of its own. And if you've got the ear for it, the time to do it, and the dedication to learn to play and keep working on it, it just continues. You'll never reach the end. There's always more to learn, more to experience. So, like I said, a life force of its own.
Right. Dan, how do you consume music today? I just imagine you having this massive vinyl record collection at home. Is that true?
Nope. Nope. I've got probably a stack of maybe this much, and they're all from the 60s, 70s, 80s. I haven't bought an album since then. But I have thousands of songs on my phone or on the computer. Stuff I've learned, stuff I've written, stuff I just want to hear. Lots of albums that way. So even though it probably doesn't have the warmth of a vinyl record, they say, and I think that's probably true, because I do have a turntable just out of sight over here, and I have a bunch of records in the other room. I find that my ear probably isn't so attuned that that's a big deal to me. I can listen to something sent to me in MP3 form and it's just fine. So I have it mostly that way, but I do look at a lot of different music, just like you do.
Yes, that's true. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. You have a new drummer since Tom has passed. Are the Jacks in some way an ongoing proposition?
Right now, I would say no. We did find a drummer from Iowa who I think Dan Polinsky had worked with a little bit and really thought he was good. And he came in and we did rehearse. We had one good rehearsal, and he is really, really good. And he would have been an excellent guy to handle the job. But it seems like when we got together, this was soon after Tom passed, our drummer. And after we were done with the practice, we felt good about it. But when we went away and thought about it a little bit, we just didn't feel right about it. Something wasn't right. Right. So we decided to put that on hold. And so right now we're still on hold, and we live kind of far away from each other, all of us right now. So we're getting pretty old, and it's just not, I don't know if it's something I don't know. I like what I'm doing with Brian because we can really, with just two of us, to decide everything. Because we sound like a full band. I use loopers, so you have.
Yes, you do.
You came and saw us. You have drums, bass, whatever I want to put on each song. So we still have a full sound, but it's just two guys arguing over what songs to do. Brian pointed out that to me the other day, and that makes it a lot easier instead of four guys. But also, you don't need as much money to do a show as you would.
Absolutely. Does the Bird-Mann Project have a full slate of gigs on the horizon as we move into spring and summer?
Well, I tell you, we used to do a lot of shows, and things, when COVID came along, that slowed a lot of stuff down. We took a lot of breaks. We realized we kind of liked the time off, but we sure didn't want to quit playing. We still want to rehearse and get out there and play. So the last year or two, we play only 1 or 2 shows a month. And that's
okay.
And I got really tired of trying to call people up. I'm not good at that, and I hate doing that. So I just said, I'm just going to stop doing that. And if people can call us if they want to show. And we've kept busy the last, I want to say 6 months by doing 1 or 2 shows. We've done maybe 4 shows since Christmas. And we did one last week. And then but we don't have another one until next month sometime. And then I haven't booked anything past that at all. I probably will.
Right.
But I would really
look forward to the next time. I look forward to the next time I'll be able to come up and see you guys play.
Well, we're going to come down
and loved it the last time.
We're going to come down and set up at your house and play if you don't. So make sure you come up.
Terrific. You tell me when.
Okay.
Dan, this has just been extraordinary. We interview all kinds of people on this program, politicos, governors, Secretary of Defense, artists, scholars. I've been looking forward to this interview with you for, it seems like, a couple of years now. So I'm just very, very grateful, and it's really been a personal honor for me to have you join us today.
Well, Dan, you've been number one guy for many, many years in my mind. Just the support you gave us when you didn't even know us, back in the days when we were playing at Tecumseh, and you would have us come over to your house and you would feed us pizza. Nobody did that kind of stuff, and we knew then you were a special guy, and you've kept that up and you've stayed with your dream. I like what you're doing. It's an amazing accomplishment. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We'll look forward to seeing you this summer in the Bird-Mann Project.
All right. And you stay in touch with me, okay?
Will do. Thank you, Dan. Take care.
Bye, Dan. Thank you so much. And thanks to Lori.